Welcome, everyone. We're so excited to have you guys today for our webinar on print ads that perform and how to stand out in the age of digital. And we are led today by Aron Caruso, who is the Executive Director of Client Partnerships for Media Now Interactive. A little bit about today. We'll dive in right away to the content for the webinar, and then we'll do a little bit of Q&A with Aron, and then we'll have a few minutes at the end to talk about what's coming up next for AMA Phoenix. We have a lot on the docket, so all very exciting things. So without further ado, would love to introduce you guys to Aron Caruso, who I mentioned is with Media Now Interactive, and he's going to dive us into today's webinar content.
That you guys really need a history of me, but I will tell you that I got my entry into media. Actually, I thought I was going to be designing magazine ads. I don't know if anybody out there remembers the absolute ads of the 80s and 90s, but I certainly, like many, was ripping them out, putting them on my wall and thinking that that's what I was going to do, and then ended up actually more in the graphic design and marketing side of just the industry, the advertising industry in general. And then here at M&I was very much a part of the marketing team, and then moved into our print sales for many years, and now also represent our digital products as well. And I mentioned that because I do want you guys to know that I do have a deep affinity for magazines, for magazine advertising. Have certainly been tracking the progression and the change in magazines and magazine ads over the last decade, right? Plus. And today, what we want to cover off on is, because there's been a little bit of a resurgence even in magazine advertising, and certainly has been an evolution of the medium. And the question is, where does it fit in today's mix in this very digitally saturated world? And what sort of print ads perform, and how can we prove out performance, and how can we utilize them, and maybe why we should be utilizing this very unique medium in our marketing campaigns. Now, in order, I promise I will keep this very quick, but I do want to get into some stories as we go through this and some application. And it is important just to understand the solutions that M&I brings to the table, because it does align with a lot of the newer targeting capabilities and some of maybe the unique features of magazine advertising that we can bring to the table, and that you can utilize, and that our partners have utilized over the last 50 years actually that we've been in this space. So why do we make a perfect partner? Well, nobody can deliver magazines like us. What you see in front of you is a collection of the titles that we still work with across multiple publishers, including many, if not all, of the business titles. And really, with M&I's solution, it's the power of utilizing national titles, but being able to deliver them locally at the DMA level to magazine subscribers. And that's what we refer to as our in-book magazine ads. And then we also have the ability to wrap magazines and then deliver it almost in a direct mail fashion directly to individuals in a manner that really helps to storytell and to drive to conversion and such. Very popular solution with B2B, but also consumer. And really, because of the capabilities we have with this targeting, allows us to deliver magazines in a unique way, and the ability as a marketer to utilize them to achieve campaign success, whatever those goals may be. But back to the task at hand, right? Magazines, holistically speaking, in this industry, in this connected world, why do 223 million people still pick up a magazine in the US? And if you're not familiar, that's about 2/3 of the US adult population. So there's still a lot of people that are reading magazines. So the question is why, right? And it really comes down to, there's a brain craving. That, in fact, it's a physical medium, right? In this digital world that's very ephemeral, is having a digital medium to be able to engage with is actually something that a lot of the younger generations are starting to look to, as well as the older generations that have always looked to their beloved magazines for information and inspiration. And I don't want to step on my own toes, so we'll get into those. But a couple of the proof points of why brains crave them, there's a lot of neuroscience studies out there. And in fact, I don't know if any of you guys have realized, but whether it's catalogs coming back in around the retail season, there's been a lot more catalogs that get sent out, or even from like the educational standpoint with textbooks. A lot of textbooks have now come back into schools after being sort of forced out, and there was a focus on digital means of education. And the reason being is that a physical medium actually engages with your brain differently than the digital space. There's a 21% higher activation in regions associated with deep reading and critical thinking. Not only that, the way that it resonates in the amygdala and the hippocampus, those are two areas of the brain that are dedicated to long-term recall, memory formation, emotional connections. Those are actually fired higher or with deeper engagement with a physical medium than with a digital application. So what that means is when you have more senses engaged, right? So with a magazine, you've got obviously sight, but then you've got smell of the paper. You're touching the paper. You can even hear it. The more senses you're incorporating, the greater the recall. And not only that, these magazines, because they're triggering in a certain space in the brain, right? That hippocampus, they actually are creating an emotional connection. And often when magazine subscribers who have an emotional connection to their titles that they're paying for and that they're subscribing to, that feeling of positivity and credibility is actually transferred to the advertisers that they see within the magazines. And they have a emotional and positive feeling around the advertisers that they're seeing. They're more relaxed and receptive when they're reading a magazine. I always like to say I've never seen anyone angrily flipping through a magazine, right? It's a very much relaxed experience when you're actually more receptive to messaging. So 34% stronger emotional responses compared to identical digital content. And this is important, and we'll get into a little bit more of this in just a few slides as far as some stories that help to, I think, really elaborate on that concept. But before we get into there, right, it's also because magazines strike a different chord. I think trustworthiness is really important right now, right? Credibility. There's speculation as far as what's happening in the digital space. Forget about ad fraudulency. Let's talk about AI, right? I mean, like there's a lot of things happening, and there's some concern of what's happening in the digital space. Magazines are still permanent and physical, and editorial or editors still adhere to moral code and ethical obligations as far as creating that content. We talked about how it engages with the senses, creating more of an experiential sort of activity. It's fun and relaxing. It's memorable. It gives you the ability to tell that story and the ability for the reader to engage in a story. And then inspiration. I think this is really important. And 82% of readers say magazines let them escape the algorithm and discover new things outside of their filter bubble. If you're not familiar with that phrase, a filter bubble, what is happening is that, right, and when we all do this, and it's good, right, as a digital advertiser and somebody that helps support digital advertising, being able to provide a personalized message, very custom to the recipient and what they're looking for and what they've shown intent on, is great and actually creates a fantastic user experience for them. However, how are you ever going to introduce new products to individuals, or how will that consumer ever get introduced to new products if they've already been put into that filter bubble? If they're only going to see what they've already shown intent on, how do they get introduced to things that they don't know that they're going to love or that they are going to want? And that's where magazines can really help. And the story I like to tell, and I subscribe to Wired magazine. That's my magazine of choice. I learned about NVIDIA in about 2018 through Wired magazine. Now, if you go online with all the AI talk, and NVIDIA is a household term or household name, back then nobody really knew about it. So it introduced me and gave me the opportunity actually to get involved early on. And it's still something I turn to find out, well, when it's not just breaking news and getting out there really quickly and flooding the internet, how do I get those deep stories? How do I really get to some high quality, in-depth articles that are going to introduce me into new topics, or from an advertising standpoint, into new products that I may want to engage with? And again, that credibility helping to elevate the product perception simply by being in the magazines is very valuable, and something as marketers we all need to keep in mind. Now, with magazines, right, we can captivate these human sensitives in this desensitized world, right? Simply by being in magazines, you can differentiate yourself from other advertisers out there. And you want to be there because with the consumers, as we mentioned, this is something that they enjoy. It's nearly 2 in 3 magazine readers love the touch and feel of a magazine. And then important on the right, 59% of readers under 35 feel the same way. And I think that makes a lot of sense when you consider that many of these individuals have been so just ingrained or fully immersed in digital everything their entire lives. Being able to engage with a printed magazine is a totally different type of experience and provides content in a much different way. And without getting into going off on too much of a tangent, I always equate this a little bit to vinyl records. If you guys are not familiar, without getting into depths, back in the day, everything was recorded in analog. So if you wanted a classic rock, which I'm talking about 70s classic rock, and you wanted the true depiction of sound, you needed to get the vinyl record to really hear what the studio sound was. When they transferred it to digital, it truncates it and actually doesn't give that full range of sound. Now, what has happened though since, which is interesting, is everything's been converted to digital recording. So in actuality, if you put the digital onto an analog vinyl record, it's not as great a sound. However, there has been a big resurgence in Taylor Swift vinyl records being sold. And the reason being is that it's an experience. It's different, right? It's much easier to stream something from Spotify. It's easy. It's more mobile, right? And you can hook up into your car stereo, right, as you're riding along. But they're still buying vinyl records, even the younger audience, because they want to be able to say, hey, it's Saturday morning. Let me sit down. Let me grab a cup of coffee. Let me put on this record. Let me relax, enjoy it, right? There's a whole experience to it. And magazines are not much different, which is why we've seen a bit of this resurgence and we found a bit of a stronghold in magazine subscribership and how we're seeing it now, these younger generations getting more introduced into the medium. Trust and credibility, right? Print publications are trusted and welcomed. I think this is really important, right? As I mentioned before, consumers find magazines to be more trustworthy and more likely to inspire action than websites or ad-supported TV, right? So 31% of marketers agree that ads delivered alongside risky content, fake news, misinformation, the biggest media challenge they're facing today. We get this request all the time now, right? As far as people want to be on premium content, premium sites. Maybe it's only, ComScore 1000 sites, what have you. There's a real interest or focused on making sure they're not aligned with fake news, with really risky sort of content that could have a bad brand sort of application or alignment. Magazines through and through are aligned to that trustworthiness, and you can be sure that your content is going to be alongside content that is reputable. Now, a quick question, and no one here is going to be able to answer it, or if you want to try and put it through the chat, feel free to do so. But on average, magazine readers spend how much time engaging with each issue? Anyone want to take a quick guess? I can even sip my water really quickly. We got any guesses, Taylor?
None yet, but I'm gonna say 5. What are you gonna say, Michaela?
30.
30.
You are both wrong. It is 45 minutes on average still that subscribers are spending with their magazines. They read it front to back, back to front. There is a whole conversation we could talk about, positioning, but magazines are really smart in how they created their content, where typically the lead article is in the back half of the magazine because they want it to be spread out. There is little to no difference in ad recall from quartile 1 to quartile 4. The only chance where that ad noticeability or recall changes is when you start dealing with cover advertising. And if that's the case, we could always talk about cover apps. But really, the idea is that people are still very much engaged with magazines, and you have them in a frame of mind, as I mentioned before, to be more receptive to your message. And they actually look to the ads as well. And we'll touch on that in just a second. So if ad spending on magazines continues, and the advertisers spent an estimated 7.3 billion on magazine media ads in 2024. You may be asking yourself that question. Well, as the advertiser, what's the benefit? Why? Again, why is there so much? Why are so many people still engaging with it? Why are advertisers still using it so much? And it's because magazines provide a unique and engaging ad experience that no other medium can replicate. We talked about it. It's tactile, it's engaging, it's memorable. You can even put physical pieces on top of the ad in the form of post-it notes or BRCs or scratch and sniffs, or right, as a way to boost engagement and further develop that brand recall, that level of trust and credibility, and then ROI and boosted digital performance. And we will get into that because that's really important, right? Like, what does the performance tell us? So for the advertiser, print is the original storytelling medium because it's that expert curated editorial content. It provides the real estate that you may need to tell a story, right? Beyond video, how can you really develop a story or a concept in a small box, right? Or a very limited real estate area? With magazines, you have that full page, full color, the tactile nature of it, the dedicated attention, the more receptive mindset, and then this full beautiful area to be able to really develop your creative concept and tell that story. And a lot of titles, what has happened over the years is it went from trying to churn out as many magazines as possible in a given year time frame to as many people as possible to now creating more of a luxury piece. So magazines have really dedicated time and money to revamp their design, their paper quality, their frequency to align to the newer frame of, or state of the medium that is more of a luxury item, and it's more of a experience, as I said before. So I mentioned some of those cool high impact units and ways that you can boost engagement with your ads. Well, M&I has actually been doing this. We've been in the magazine space for 55 years. We were actually the first company to ever put a physical post-it note on a magazine ad back in 1993 when we were actually owned by 3M. But ever since then, we've continued to expand upon what we can do on the printed page or even off of the printed page now with QR launching AR executions as well. But here's a great idea, right? Textured inks and specialized inks. What a great way in order to really bring a piece to life, whether you're commemorating something and using metallic inks or that great soft touch, right? We talked about how important that tactile nature of the medium is. You can even elevate it simply by putting one of those soft touch inks on top, which lends itself to more of a luxurious feel and association to the brand. Or utilize some sort of grit piece. In this case, what you see here, that would be a rough texture on the outside. And then with the fantastic cleaning product, you can wipe that clean and right there would be nice and smooth. You could even add some sort of high gloss finish to really make that pop. But also there's ways to do leather, whether it's sports, you can make it look like sports, the footballs and basketballs, so on and so forth. So a lot of great ways that you could utilize simply different inks in order to bring a piece to life or add further engagement. I mentioned post-it notes. What a great way to provide reminders or coupons or recipes. If you're in that in the CPG space, you could talk about your product and here's a great recipe and put it on your notebook, put it on your laptop, put it on your fridge, right? Contact information, directions, instructions, or even just brand building actions like providing daily affirmations, right? Something that associates to your overall brand message, but maybe is not a direct sell or reminder. In this case, you can utilize some sort of creative form like a post-it in order to convey that message. Scratch off cards. I will say this was an interesting execution. As far as like, I'd love to see contests more, right? Or something that's really engaging that extends again the engagement from the printed page, boosting recall to actually some sort of action. So really the creative capabilities are up to you as far as how do you want to utilize the inks here in this sort of scratch execution to complement whatever it is you're doing from a campaign level. So mystery messages, or again, coupons or discounts. You could do this as some sort of reveal, or even make a game out of it, whether that be trivia, board game, or blackjack like you see here. All right, scented cards. To me, we can never do enough of these. I love I don't know. Hopefully you guys feel the same. A scratch and sniff card. I always thought that like every candle company out there should do it. Anybody that's got different flavors, different scents. What a great way, again, to incorporate additional senses, to boost recall, to further engagement, to really create, I mean, sense of smell to emotion is directly tied, right? So one of the great executions is this is a great execution where we actually had the Publix grocery chain down in Tampa was launching a new line of sandwiches from their deli counter. So in this case, this had a barbecue scent. We provided them with a few different types of barbecue scents because, of course, Kansas City is different than the down south sweet, hickory sort of a barbecue scent. So they chose this one. The story I like to tell is I actually presented this to a agency in Nashville that allowed dogs, and these were stacked in the corner, and dogs were going over there and sniffing it and going crazy. And the people of Nashville approved this as well, so it's Nashville approved and dog approved. But really, here's a great way. Another client that used this recently used that coconut smell, that kind of pina colada smell, in order to drive, and it was promoting another location down in Florida, Naples. And I'm telling you, if you are a pina colada lover like I am, the moment you scratch and sniff that, it brings you to that feeling of being on the beach, and that's what you want to do, right? So you're boosting inspiration and engagement, and of course, recall. So there's leather you could do, obviously aligned to leather products or to invoke some sort of feelings or emotions. Grass, right? Whether that be for actual product or just to invoke the idea of springtime. Coconut, suntan lotion, popcorn, right? Get creative. Maybe it's not selling popcorn, but it's something about a movie release or some sort of event promotion. And then, of course, you can tap it to nostalgia with things like cookies and firewood and even things like coffee, which there are people out there like myself that are fanatical about. Another great one, right? Repositionable sticker executions. Stickers are huge, right? Being able to put them onto laptops, people are putting them on their to note where they've been. And that, in this case, is how Ocean City was utilizing and promoting a new brand launch for themselves. They had this great new logo that had this smiley face, right? The OC is the eyes. And they put these on their ads and targeted it to their feeder markets and also the actual local market from, within Ocean City as a way to be able to provide that longer life, whether you saw it before you went, after you went, and now you want to take it as a commemorative piece or as a way to just really boost that brand presence and further drive that engagement. The other thing to keep in mind, and I always recommend if you are doing magazine advertising, you're trying to get creative, doing it on this local level with M&I and utilizing some of these solutions, the moment you put something on the page, whether that's a card, whether it's a post-it note, whether that is a sticker like this, you create a bookmark effect, right? The last time you picked up a magazine, most likely the first thing that happened, you thumbed through and you ended up in that blow-in card VRC, right? That's a bookmark. This becomes permanently affixed or could be removable depending on what you're trying to do. But if you want to ensure that every single person that gets that magazine that you have your advertising in sees it and engages with it, put something on the printed page. So you can use this, right, for like mascots like this or logos, sports calendars and events, concert lineups, reminder messaging, right? We were talking earlier about kids and going through the potty training phase. Well, here's a great way, right? Reminder for teeth brushing. You got to do 2 minutes for that nice bright smile. That can go on your mirror in your bathroom, right? Or tips on toilet training, so on and so forth. Or maybe it's just going into lunch bags as fun messaging. Or then the more serious side of it, right? Whether that's health-based and it's a vitamin reminder or some sort of self-screening reminder. And we have a lot of these examples. You can go onto our website and check them out. But of course, if you ever have any questions specifically, we can talk about it afterwards, or of course can always come in and give some sort of demo for you. Back to the idea of inspiration, right? So an insertion included a laminated card in this instance as a way to try to track some sales, promote driving into store, right? Sometimes it's about promoting e-commerce. Sometimes it's about trying to drive foot traffic into stores. In this case, you have to go in to redeem and get this great swatch booklet of all the great new colors that they had coming from Benjamin Moore. The other thing that's cool here and that you can execute utilizing M&I solutions are localized messaging within those given markets. So with our solution, we're going to utilize a few titles that align to your target audience based off MRI rankers, readership profile, editorial content, right? And we'll help make that recommendation. But then you'll have multiple markets that you're looking to target, and you can actually change your creative message by market at no additional cost. So in this case, Benjamin Moore was doing it over a few different locations and highlighting the different stores that actually carried Benjamin Moore products. So you have it right there. But we've also seen it where there are products that maybe in given markets are the same general product, but with a different brand associated. Makes it very easy to do that efficiently, easily, at no additional cost, and really be able to have that localized messaging. Because a localized message in a national publication boosts recall, I believe it's 23%. So it's certainly something, right? When you think about seeing localized ads in a localized magazine, that's kind of commonplace, right? You're going to see it as part of the rest of that collection of brands within there. But if you take a localized ad and put it in a national magazine, the recipients of that have no idea that that's not going national. And all of a sudden, something that's more regional or localized gets a huge credibility lift simply by being in those national titles, even though it's only going localized. So very efficient, very targeted. And one of the success stories here is because sometimes, especially in the CPG world, you may not have distribution nationally, right? Or maybe you want to start to elevate, maybe you want to grow, right? We can help find distribution channels utilizing cover apps. But we had a client, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Justin's Nut Butter. It's actually my preferred peanut butter of choice. When they first started out, they used M&I solution. It was literally the first time they were venturing into advertising because that was the whole creative concept behind it was they told me I needed to advertise, so here I am, right? But so Justin's Nut Butter put the big bottle right in the center, fun messaging, aligns to the brand, but then only delivered it to the 3 markets where they had distribution. Now, why is that important? Because now once they're in those pages of Real Simple, Food and Wine, All Recipes, Better Homes and Gardens, so on and so forth, you're now alongside brands like Jiffy, Skip, Peter Pan, again, to choose your brand. And now all of a sudden, people are not thinking about, Justin's Nut Butter as this kind of small unknown. They're like, whoa, maybe I should know about this. This is as at the same level as these well-known, well-renowned peanut butter brands. So simply by utilizing this sort of execution, you can elevate the perception of your brand or your client's brand. A taste of success. So I really love this story because not just because I love bacon. This is kind of a fun story because we actually worked with the creative team to help try to conceptualize. In fact, they originally wanted to try to have a paper that you could burn, and when it burned, it smelled like bacon. And we did some research. You can find paper like that, but we could not get it at a scale in a way that would work within this form. So we ended up on one of these fun tearaway posters. They could have done a scratch off or a scratch and sniff, a bacon scent. And actually we saw Oscar Mayer, I think 3 months later, did a magazine campaign utilizing bacon scent on it. So I thought that was funny. You got PR pickup, so on and so forth. But anyway, with this one, they did a inspirational poster that you could actually tear out, a la those inspirational posters that were on every gym wall in America in the 90s, right? But it was fun and played off of the whole bacon concept. What's great here is this starts to get into the realm of performance because 87% recalled the gatefold ad, 86% took action as a result of seeing it, and even 31% made a purchase after exposure to this ad, right? So often we think of magazine advertising as being this like top funnel, brand awareness, kind of spray and pray. You're not going to get anything from it. But if we do a few things, right, whether it's we do kind of pre and post, in this case, an actual brand study through MRI, or you're taking some readings before and after the campaign of sales or website traffic, you can actually see how magazines affect the brand lift and can affect sales and actually drive direct to conversion. Google has been stealing magazine attribution since its inception and since its birth, because you see it on the magazine. There's a good chance you're going to go either directly to the site or probably search it up in some form or fashion, and then that's going to get the credit for what magazines actually did. But when we can survey and actually get to the base of it, and the people that are actually engaging with the magazine ad, we typically see about 10% conversion coming directly from magazine ads. So it is not simply top funnel awareness, great way to utilize it, but it can drive conversion at the bottom line. So are you still wondering why $7.3 billion in magazine advertising? Well, it's because they perform to the things I was just talking about. 4 in 5 readers take action after seeing a magazine ad. 17 days of possible audience exposure. Magazines still, right? 45 minutes spent engaging with the magazine. Even a magazine that somebody isn't subscribed to lives on their table within their realm, right? Their home, their office for on average 17 days. And there was a study out there that showed the affinity towards receiving a magazine in the mail, whether you're subscribed to it or not, is at the same level. It's the highest level. I think it's like a 98% favorability as a greeting card. So receiving a magazine is looked to and is as loved as getting a birthday card from mom, right? So this is a medium that really is cherished and looked to. It's much different than anything else out there. And magazine readers are 3 times more likely to welcome ads in the magazines. This is almost like Super Bowl sort of advertising, right? Because you have the choice. You can flip past it if you want, but there is a unique look back effect, which is worth mentioning. When you're reading an editorial piece, you will actually look back and forth to the ad adjacent to it 8 times in that given session. So again, you get a lot of residual impact. You get a lot of long-term brand recall. It's living for a long time. There's readers per copy because people coming over, it's on the coffee table, they're picking up, reading, and flipping through it. So back to that idea of favorability, right? Did you know only 18% of readers find ads in print magazines intrusive, right? So it's less than 1 in 5. Versus, closer to 70% who agree that TV online ads appear at inconvenient moments or can, right? That's why it is important if you are engaging in digital advertising. Em and I, obviously, we're about 90% digital support at this point. There are ways to do it right. Please make sure you're doing it in a fashion that is keeping in mind the consumer experience, and making sure that you're utilizing channels and tactics that are non-intrusive and welcomed by the consumer. But magazines make that very easy to do. So how are magazines the most effective return on advertising? Well, the studies, when they start to take a look at the dollars and the ROAS, show that magazines actually have the highest ROAS of any medium out there. And the data point that I really like to point out here is that 70% higher recall when people are exposed to a print ad versus a digital ad. And obviously, I've said a few times the idea of the tactical nature and the multiple senses. What's really cool is when they've done studies in the past and they had their group of respondents, they will show them a digital display ad and a magazine ad, right? And they'll show them in conjunction. And then afterwards, in the immediacy, they'll ask them and say, okay, which ad do you have more recall of? What happened in these ads? And in that initial interview, shortly after seeing these ads, they actually had very good recall, if not higher, with digital ads than with print ads. Okay, so why am I mentioning that? Well, when they bring these participants back only 2 weeks later, they had almost no recollection of the digital brands, but could still recall the brands they saw in print. That's the idea of that long-term brand recall. So one of the things that I always try to convey is the idea of utilizing mediums, utilizing your approach based on what it is you're trying to accomplish. And we need to have a balance of short-term goals and long-term goals, right? And that's where magazines can really help. Because if ultimately you're trying to boost the brand credibility, boost the recall so that when somebody is in store trying to make a purchase decision, what they saw in the magazine will resonate, and that recall will be important at that point in time when they're trying to make that final decision. What I always say is utilize digital in order to capture that conversion in the moment, create a less of a friction piece, right, to driving to an e-commerce site or a website in order to drive to conversion, but use magazines to fuel the funnel. use magazines to develop your long-term brand goals. Use it for what it is works really well for, which is developing and conveying that brand message, or really providing a story that the consumer can dive into, can understand, engage with, and then ultimately take for the long term as they go on and continue in their consumer journey. And this is important because when they take a look again at studies, they actually see that magazines in conjunction with other mediums like digital or magazines with TV actually boost performance better than any of those other tactics in combination. So I always say, if you want the most bang for your digital buck, incorporate magazines into the mix. And one quick story, we were working with a partner that had a wedding facility, kind of high-end luxury wedding facility, and they had been having challenges trying to increase their website traffic and boost engagement with some of their wedding planners that they were trying to reach, or newly engaged couples. They'd been executing digital campaigns. They actually reached out to us, and we put together a cover wrap campaign targeted to wedding planners in the area and the newlyweds that they had identified that they were looking to reach. And in the month that we delivered the cover wrap campaign alongside what they were doing digital, they actually had an increase in unique visits to their website, up 257%. So when you have a challenge, you can't figure out how to maybe jumpstart something, it may make sense to take a look at magazines and even something like a cover wrap. So how can we measure ad impact? The reality is, listen, digital has had this proliferation, not just because there's so many people engaging with digital, but it also provides that nice buttoned up report right at the end of the day, which I understand we're all beholden to. How did it perform? And then providing that to a client and showing, hey, this is what your media dollars did. Now, just because it's tougher to capture on a campaign by campaign level with magazines doesn't mean we can't do it. Some of it takes a little bit of extra effort. We can obviously execute things like MRI brand lift studies, where you can start to really capture sorts of metrics like brand awareness, favorability, purchase intent, ad specific actions. It's all based on pre and post survey results. But you could also do that yourself. As I mentioned before, take a look. What's my traffic look like before magazine ads? What's it look like after? What are my in-store sales prior and then post? Right? Takes a little bit more work and effort, but certainly can be done and is a great way to showcase the value of the media. With cover reps, we actually have a built-in sort of tracking capability where we'll want to do this with some frequency. That's when we see the best responses, but we will actually send out a survey in between the last couple of issues, the last two issues that the recipient will be receiving. And in doing so, you can customize it, find out what sort of insight, did you know about this brand before? Did you reach out? Did you go to the website? Did you make a purchase? So on and so forth. Sometimes you just ask about, what did you think of the creative messaging? Whatever it is, what type of insights you're trying to garner. The one thing I will say, and I think is really important, is that cover wraps are the only medium I have ever been involved with where we actually get people in those survey responses thanking the brand for making them part of that program, right? Thank you so much. Love this copy of Food and Wine. Love the recipes. This is such a unique, cool, fun campaign, right? So certainly I've never seen that response when, some sort of pop-up takes over your screen as you're trying to read an article. Magazines are the cover ups are the only medium I've ever heard of where people really thank you, because you are, in this case, you're giving them a gift for their time. And then finally, we can utilize things like QR codes and even link it to things like augmented reality. The one watch out I would say here is that it is not an attribution solution. There is a little bit of a disconnect, right? If everything I was saying before is true, where people are turning to magazines to kind of remove themselves from digital, be part of the digital detox, have more of a relaxed, experiential, asking them to go back to their phone is a bit challenging. So if you are going to try to really use this as some sort of conversion tool or attribution tool, you'd really want to emphasize it a bit, make it part of the creative. And I would even say if you can have some sort of contest associated or giveaways associated, that would certainly help to boost the scan rate of your QR code. But what is cool is you can still use things like pearls, right? Unique URLs. And in one case, we had a agency known, or excuse me, a client called Road Scholar that was looking to promote their educational trips, right, across overseas throughout the country here. And they used a great collection of like Smithsonian and Better Homes and Gardens and one of the business titles, right? And in doing so, they actually also put unique URLs on every market, right? Because we can do no charge copy splitting as a way to help boost the engagement. They actually changed the images based on what they knew of the people in the particular market that they thought would resonate best. The point of the story is that they actually had 127 recipients go directly to those URLs. So www.roadscholar / adventure. That did not account for everybody that just went to the website, that Google searched it afterwards. These are 127 people that took the time to type in that 30-character URL. So those are super intenders, if you ask me, taking that extra step. So it proves that magazines, again, are not just top funnel awareness. They actually can directly drive to conversion. And believe it or not, this client actually took the digital dollars they were spending elsewhere, reinvested it in the magazine ad with us because of how successful the campaign was. And I mentioned before, right, M&I, and this is the last section, so bear with me, right? We are really about trying to figure out, how do you make this more engaging? How do we keep innovating this space? And there's a lot of things we can do. I mentioned the covers before. That is a great opportunity that I don't think enough advertisers take advantage of. It is fantastic for reaching that super niche audience that, maybe you can't do in the digital world because scale isn't quite there. Or maybe you really need to have a conversation, right? You're selling a piece of software or SaaS, right? Software as a service. That is a dialogue. You need to provide data points. You need to talk about how this service works really well. Well, when you get this real estate of cover advertising, think of wrapping the Fortune 500 with your message. That has got a lot of clout. That has got a lot of brand impact and message impact, and a great way to get your message across to a very specific, determined group of people. So we can cover up any of these sorts of unique issues. We also are tapping into things like special issues, the things that you see close to news, that you see close to checkout counters nowadays, or even sports programs, commemorative sports programs for college or for professional sports. All the high impact units that we talked about before. There are actually also custom magazines. This niche audience publication is known as Babies First, that goes into maternity wards across the country in that first week, right? There's those days after giving birth where you're in the hospital and you're recouping and just enjoying this new life. And here is a publication that you received that has great tips brought to you from editors of Meredith titles, right? And it's got great tips on what you're going to seeing and experiencing. And you also can put ads in here if you're a brand that really wants to reach that niche audience in a perfect moment in time. You could put sample packs in here if you're promoting baby creams or vitamins, what have you. So a really unique, cool application that I'm sure many people don't even know is out there. And then the new kind of approach are these custom publications. So this is literally a magazine that you can get developed for you, your brand, right, that you're representing, brought to you from the editors of Meredith brands. So a couple of different brands have done this, Mars being one of the bigger ones. They actually created this paw print magazine. Paw print magazine goes to 1 million subscribers of the Meredith family that have both a dog and cat in the home. So they have taken over. There's great content around it. There's dedicated ad pages promoting all of their pet-based products. They also have a Celebrate version that promoted more of the Mars candy bars and such. They did one around Halloween, so on and so forth. The reason why I talk about it is 79 minutes read on average. So that's almost double what a standard magazine would get. 89% likely to take action, and they actually tracked 6.6% sales lift based on this publication. So with this kind of movement in the space of where magazines there's still new magazines being launched every single year, but often they're very niche. So rather than field and stream, it's bass fishing, it's trout fishing, it's, very specific and very niche. You actually, as an advertiser or representing a brand, can actually do that for your brand, for your clients, utilizing our partnership with Dotdash Meredith. Great way to do it. Maybe it's an assisted living facility or healthcare. A lot of those health systems do their own magazines. Why not, rather than talk about kind of some of that localized, or in conjunction with some of that localized community messaging, have some of this more editorial based content coming from titles like Health Magazine and such. And these are the magazines that we have, or not magazines, but the brands that we have access to be able to create these custom publications. So you could do a finance one using Investopedia and the balance. We could do something for more outdoor, whether it's like, a shoe brand or outdoor cooler brand. We can utilize Tree Hugger and LifeWire, or obviously within the liquor space, this kind of idea in the middle. If you're a liquor brand and you want to promote different cocktail recipes and ways to be responsible, ways to have fun in the area, right? You get some control. This is a custom magazine that you can develop utilizing the partnership with Dotdash Meredith. But of course, right, we want to make sure, okay, with the digital space, can we complement these two? This is a question that comes up quite frequently. And there are some things that we can do. We can certainly do an email campaign aligned to the list that we have with cover apps. We can geo-target and overlay, an audience parameter like a magazine subscriber targeted to the area, the DMA where the magazine ads are going. We could align to the publications and their websites in order to have that alignment as well, with the odds being that a subscriber to that magazine is also going to that website, as a way to really align and have this integrated approach between the digital and the print space. We also, if you have a CRM list, we can utilize that with the cover apps to reach those individuals one-to-one. And then there are digital companies out there that can help identify the traffic that comes after you've done a magazine campaign, in order to start to put names and even build out your own CRM list that then we could take and then do another cover app campaign too. So there certainly are ways to integrate seamlessly digital and magazines. But at the end of the day, right, magazines provide, in an always-on world, that balance that we're looking for, because it does allow us to break away a bit from the digital space that we're all spending probably way too much time on. I mean, you got Apple and all the devices out there are now telling you, kind of forcing it down your throat, like how much time you're spending on social and in this app. And, so there is a movement that digital detox is very real, and magazines are a great place to put your message or your brand's message to not just drive top funnel awareness, but also drive down to conversion, establish that long-term brand recall, elevate credibility, perception, create an emotional connection, give you the real estate to deliver a long-form story, showcase beautiful imagery, so on and so forth, right? And as the data shows, there is performance metrics. It does give the highest ROAS. And is a great place to inspire brand and really introduce your brand or help elevate it. So with that, I thank you all for listening and being a part of this. And yeah, would love to, if there are questions, certainly will do my best to answer them or hear your thoughts on what we just spoke about.
Yes, one question that came through was, what do you think are the pros and cons of using QR codes?
Yeah. We're talking specifically within the printed space, I'm
Correct.
assuming.
Yes.
Yeah. So here's what I would say is that the pros and cons of using the QR code I mentioned before is that it's a bit of a disconnect from why people are engaging with the magazines to begin with, right? If you're engaging with the magazine to remove yourself from digital, asking someone to pick up their phone now, re-engage in the digital world, and then scan a QR code. And I hate to say this, but not just asking them to scan a QR code, but asking them to scan a QR code on an advertisement is certainly kind of a big leap, right? So that's where what I would say is it really, and kind of, I would say, better way to phrase what I was going to say is, one of the mistakes I see is a lot of advertisers want to create a QR code, slap it in the corner and think that like there's enough intrigue created by just putting a QR code on a page that it's going to drive all of this action and engagement, right? There was that whole big response to when Coinbase did the QR codes in the Super Bowl ad. There was a promotion involved in there, and I think it was, whether it was the first so many hundred or whatever, got like $15 worth of Bitcoin or something. There was a big promotion involved. It wasn't just the QR code that drove the engagement, it was that added promotion component. So that's what I would recommend, is if you were looking for the QR code to actually do something beyond just putting a URL on a page, is really make it part of the piece, really create an incentive around it, put a good call to action to it, not just more info, scan here, right? Like there's got to be a real reason that they would want to engage with it. But then when you have it, it can provide additional capabilities. You could put a dynamic QR code on the page so that you could actually change, even though it's been printed, change where that QR code is directing to. So definitely some benefits of putting a QR code, but it is certainly not like some magic bullet, silver bullet. It's something that you want to think about. And if you're going to use it beyond just the way you would a URL on a page, I would really think about how you're going to incorporate it into the creative and what is the real value for the consumer to scan that and take that extra step.
And what about for digital? Let's just do the comparison there, since you were mentioning for print right then.
Yeah. Digital, I think it's kind of the disconnect. Like right now, I mean, I don't know if anybody, why would you, I mean, I guess you could scan the QR code off the screen to bring it to your phone, right? Like it's usually the application and where it's being shown. I think there are certain times where it would make sense, right? I see it on billboards sometimes, and I've seen mixed reviews on the engagement, because if you're driving, you probably shouldn't be promoting somebody to start using their phone while they're driving, right? Like that doesn't seem very safe. I think it actually comes back to the same thing. I would say I've scanned off of maybe a CTV ad. If I'm sitting on my couch and I see a QR code and it's of a product that I'm interested in, or usually it's because they're providing some sort of real incentive to scan it. But I think that's a pretty good application, and we have some solutions and have had some success with advertisers through CTV and incorporating QR codes. Again, I think what I would do is don't just do it as an afterthought if you're going to do it, unless you want it to be an afterthought, right? Because it's kind of nice. Like some people prefer it versus typing the URL. I would say if you want it to really perform, put some thought behind it, make it either part of the creative or make sure there's a good reason why people would want to scan it.
Excellent. I know you've given us an example, but do you have examples of how brands are creatively directly measuring the results from their printed ad investments?
So right now it really comes down to being kind of savvy or smart and doing due diligence, right? The pre and post measurement to understand what kind of lift has happened during the campaign or as a result of. There were a lot of things floating around for a while. There were what were they called? Not NFCs, but like the whatever the chips were that like maybe it was NFC, near field communication, where a chip in a piece. So if your phone was within proximity to it, it would trigger the phone, and then you could try to gauge it. The reality is, in this day and age, creating unique landing pages, right? There's nothing outside of kind of the tried and true unique landing pages. So, the people coming there probably only came from this. You could do that through QR codes as well. And hey, listen, here's what I will say, and this gives me a chance to plug my prediction again. About 5 years ago, I predicted that wearables will become commonplace in 2028. That is what I'm projecting. I think I'm kind of right on line with some of the recent advent and Ray-Ban, partnering with Meta, and now they're on their third generation, and they're talking about increased sales. And Warby Parker just linked up with, I forget if it was Google or one of the other major players, right? So once there's wearables in play, though, now all of a sudden it could get really interesting, because now if you're wearing these and you're reading at the same time, and it can actually gauge and see what you're looking at, now you could actually start to get some real direct attribution to something like magazines, or understand exactly how people are engaging with them. But I think that's like I said, at least 3 years away, but we'll see how that goes. And we certainly will be monitoring it, and I'm curious to see how that all plays out myself.
Excellent. Any other questions for anyone else? Feel free to unmute yourself and just go ahead and ask. We have just a couple more minutes.
Well, thank you so much, Aron. This was really, really insightful, and just a topic that's been kind of something we haven't covered yet with AMA. We've done, I'm sure you can imagine, so much talk is out there about AI and stuff like that, which, it affects everything. But this was a great topic and super interesting. So thank you so much for sharing your insights on it.
No, my
Can I just
pleasure.
jump in real quick,
Yeah.
Michaela? Thank you, Aron. That was a great job. And we have someone on the phone, actually, Betsy Griffith, who is with Lavage, and she's had some success with ASU. So she is just on the phone. So they continue to talk about opportunities with us. So yeah, if I put my information in the chat, if anyone would like to meet for coffee, we can discuss it further. But I really appreciate everyone's time as well.
Well, Taylor, I think we have a few last minute slides, right, for AMA.
Yes, we do, because people need to take note of amazing events coming up.
I know.
Other good stuff.
We've been busy with lots of really great content coming up. Our next event is in person. It'll be at Fate Brewing Company in Scottsdale. A lot of our members happen to be founders of their own companies, whether it's a marketing consultant company or, social media freelance, everything in between, starting their own agency. So we have a great panel that will be on August 27th. It'll be in person with some happy hour, some refreshments. So please join us for that. Our next webinar will be September 9th. We have Josh Molina, he started his own podcast called Zero to CMO, talking about everything marketing and stuff like that. So he's going to be talking about why you would create your own podcast, when you shouldn't, how to stand out in the oversaturation of podcasts that exist nowadays. And then coming up on October 8th, we have another panel. We have 3 amazing members of the LGBTQ community that are going to be talking about representation in marketing. So we're securing a location for that, but that'll be on Wednesday, October 8th. So lots of great content coming up for AMA Phoenix. We hope to see you guys there in person. Oh yeah, I forgot I included this on there. Our moderator will be Meredith Dennis, who is the brand new president for AMA Phoenix. We're a fiscal year, so our fiscal year starts in July. So she just took over as our new president of AMA Phoenix from Ryan Katz. So she'll be leading that discussion because she founded her own B2B marketing agency called Compression Marketing. So hope to see you all there. And yes, that's about our podcasting webinar. So really excited about that as well. I will share, we do have one volunteer opportunity available if anyone's really interested. It's on my team. One of the things that we found with in-person events, it's hard to keep track of everything. And so if anyone's interested in joining the programming committee and helping with venue management search, we're adding that position into our board. So just wanted to share that. We also have a job board. So if you are either hiring and want to try to get out to marketing people within the AMA space, you can post on there. Or if you're on the hunt right now for a job, we have lots of jobs posted for potential opportunities within the marketing sphere here in Phoenix. And then I just have to share, if you're not a member of AMA Phoenix, would love to chat with you about what that looks like. We offer lots of online trainings and tools and resources and discounts for certifications. So if you're interested, I can put you in touch with our membership chair, who's brand new to our board, Sarah Brown. So if you're interested, feel free to reach out. And last but not least, it's our last QR code, I promise. But this is, it's really important for us to get information back after our events on what you liked, what you didn't like. I'm sure Aron would always be interested in feedback as well. You did an amazing job, by the way. It's a lot of talking for a long time. But, we're also looking for potential topics for future events. So if you have thoughts or feedback, please feel free to fill out our post-event survey or reach out to me directly. That also works too. But other than that, we landed right at 1 o'clock. I can't say we've done that in a while. I feel like we've ran over the last few webinars. So thanks everyone for joining us today. We really appreciate it. Thank you to Jen and Aron and Taylor for helping organize, and we'll see you next time.